Welcome to the Better and Better podcast. I'm Inslee, and this podcast is dedicated to you, dedicated to your self-improvement, and dedicated to your journey of getting better and better. On today's episode, we're talking about the secret to strong communities. We're talking about how to turn your network into your net worth and creating real community impact. Because at the end of the day, we all have a platform. Like, it takes a village, regardless of what you do. It takes a village, and we're all a part of somebody else's village, but we have to find ways to employ our platform. So let's get into it. Now, what is community to me? Community to me is not just the people that I know and the people I'm friends and family with, but it's the people that I live around. It's the people that I work with. It's the people in my grocery store. It's the people in my neighborhood. It's the people that live in the same building as me. And I personally really have a strong sense of community and an idea that we should be in community with people, especially in times like this where everyone's so divisive, things are so polarizing, and we're all human beings. We all live on the same continent. We all want rights. We all want to be heard. We all want to be validated. So we all are members of the same community. But I think what we have to focus on is ways to bring our community closer. And I think my upbringing has a lot to do with that. So growing up, I got the opportunity to spend a lot of time with my cousins, which I absolutely love, because it made me realize that like you can grow up in households that are different than yours. And at the end of the day, y'all still have to figure out how to get along, how to resolve things where your rules are a little bit different than mine. Like, community isn't always easy, but those are the best relationships. Like those are the best things, is when you figure out how to work with people and figure out how to be in community. But I used to see my cousins like, I don't know, every weekend, every other weekend, something like that. So it was always about being together, breaking bread together, finding games to play, or making little music videos and choreographing dances. And it didn't matter what we were doing. It was the fact that we were doing it together that really, really mattered. And I think that's something that is missing. It's like a missing link from a lot of our families, a lot of our friends. And it's something I read about recently. Like, more of us need to get together without having any direct cause. Just having that opportunity and that time to get together and do nothing is like a really big thing for like your personal wellness and like your personal well-being. So just starting off, like, I think community is just something that makes each of us a little bit stronger. So I probably also feel the most connected to my community when I'm doing things for my community. So I kind of relate this to something that I recently read that basically did a study on like popular high schoolers. And no, maybe you're not a high schooler listening to this, but I think there's some value in it. So they looked into like popular high schoolers and what made those kids popular. And it was because those kids individually had a lot of people that they liked. And so if you have a lot of people that you like and a lot of people you're pouring into, I think that's what really makes an experience somewhere more valuable and makes the community to you more valuable. I kind of also relate this to sports. So if you're into sports, you probably have tailgated or gone to some kind of events, or I mean, at the very least, just like gone to a sports bar. If you're the person that's actually organizing pep rallies or organizing events around that sports group, you're going to feel more connected to it. So I think the more things that you do to support your community and show up for your community are the things that make you feel more connected to it. And personally, when I'm helping out, if I'm doing a clothing drive, if I'm going with friends to do some kind of community service, because a lot of our jobs offer opportunities for community service, like whatever it is, if I'm contributing to my community, I feel a lot more tied to it. Like, I feel closer to the people. I feel closer to what's going on. I feel closer to their issues. So I think it's about adding to your community to feel a part of your community. So it does take a little bit of work, but I think it's worth it. Community also isn't just the people that we follow on Instagram quickly. These are people that we return back to. These are people that we actually build relationships with. So relationship building does take a little bit of time and effort, but the relationships matter and they play a really big role in community building. So when you're thinking about building community and you're thinking about making impact, I think relationships are the first place to start to help you identify issues or identify needs in your community or places that you can support or ways you can help out. And then, of course, let's state the obvious. Building community does help you network, but networking isn't just about clout. We can take it a step further. It's about the collective power, right? So it's about having a community of people, a community mindset where everybody feels involved and everybody wants to help out in some kind of way. And everybody wants to see something come to fruition for that community, something good happen for that community. That's where we have our strength. And that's where we have the strength in numbers, is building community by building relationships. So relationships are really the first step. So you're building community, you want to build a movement. How do you build a sustainable movement? Key ingredient to building something that is sustainable is actually trust. It's meeting people where they're at and giving them ways to trust you and giving yourself opportunities to trust them. So one of the most successful movements of all time, of course, I love to go back to this one, is the civil rights movement. The civil rights movement was successful for several reasons, but one of the reasons that I think it amassed so many followers in so many different communities was that they went to church with people. They went where people worship. They went where people were vulnerable and wanted to talk about things and wanted to listen. So the key ingredient here really is trust building and relationship building so that you can have a platform or a foundation or a group of people to rely on when you're ready to do something. And it's increasingly important to be civically engaged. We all have to find ways to help people in our community, to show up for our community. And whether you realize it or not, you're already doing it because you're probably online. You're probably looking at Instagram or TikTok or Facebook. So you're a member of an online community. To create something that's sustainable and that really empowers people, you have to embrace change. I think there's a big thing of overcoming the dissonance that we have in relationships when it comes to change, right? So let me break that down a little bit. Let's rewind. Dissonance is what happens, and cognitive dissonance specifically is what happens when we believe a certain thing about the world and then we are confronted with something that completely changes that idea or presents itself to be opposite of what we believe about the world. Sometimes this happens in relationships and you see it on Facebook or you'll see it at Thanksgiving dinner, right? We'll see it at times that we do expect it or even sometimes that we don't, where we are confronted with a different belief or we're confronting somebody with a belief that's different than the one that they currently hold. And so we have to hold space for change. The other half of holding space for change when it comes to community is holding space for people to change your ideas. So you might be going into something saying, hey, I want to do this neighborhood activity together. And you get a few people from the block and they say, well, you wanted to do X, we want to do Y. Embrace the change. Part of starting all of this and part of empowering people is overcoming that dissonance when it comes to our relationships and embracing that change. It's also important to mention that you shouldn't beat down on the people that you're intending to build up. And I see this a lot online. So I'm a TikToker. I love TikTok down. I'm always posting. I'm always in other people's posts and in their comment sections and in their business. And the thing that I see that is so crazy to me when it comes to TikTok and people getting political or giving their hot takes or dropping their think pieces, and I love a good think piece, is that they'll get in the comments once they have said this controversial thing and then be surprised that people don't see it the same way that they do. If you want people to see things from your perspective, you cannot beat down on the same people that you're intending to have listen. And I actually got that from a creator on TikTok named Shaheem. And they are a therapist. And the biggest thing that they always enforce when it comes to community building, and that's a really good person to follow if you want to find posts and listen to things about community. But one thing that they always talk about when it comes to community building is that you cannot beat up on people and then expect them to still listen. It just doesn't work that way. So I think we can't beat down on the people that we intend to empower. Another way that we empower people is by giving them tools and giving them strategies and not just giving them blind advice. So a big way that I have seen this one happen in my real life is when I first started hearing about weaponized incompetence and the mental load that women carry in their households. So I thought this was like revolutionary, and I'm like, oh my God, I need to tell all the women that live with men or have husbands and like let them know about this, or even men that I was dating, and tell them like, what my boundaries were around that. Cool. But the problem is people hear about it and then we don't know how to actually employ any strategies around it. It's not just giving people a piece of information, because we sometimes have a piece of information that might change the way that someone thinks or sees the world or the way that somebody acts. And that's great. But we have to also give them a way to employ a little strategy. And we're about to get into some strategies in just a moment here. But above all else, I think the biggest way that you can empower people is by creating a shared vision, creating something that you guys are building and working on and working towards together. So I think this is the perfect time to introduce the book that I got this idea from about the shared vision, and a couple other different strategies and key ingredients from this book that I think we can take away. And then I'll introduce you to a little activity. So go ahead and get some pen and paper or get your thoughts ready. But I want to introduce to you guys today a book that is titled The Purpose of Power. So we're talking about building a platform, turning your network into your net worth. But what do you do with it? What is the purpose of having power? And I do want to say a quick little side note about the book that I'm going through. The Purpose of Power by Alicia Garza was written by one of the co-founders of the Black Lives Matter movement. And I am aware of the controversy, and I don't agree with starting movement, taking the wealth. Like, obviously, there's right and wrong. However, there are some valuable things in this book. And I do think that a person that was able to create something that was that successful and write a book about it might have a few little tips that we can learn from. So it's worth a listen. So a few quick strategies from the book. First is start with relationships, not issues. Second is center marginalized voices. Third is create an ecosystem of change. And I would also add on to that ecosystem of change and embracing change that you want to create an ecosystem in general. So regardless of what it is that you're trying to do with your community, you want to create an ecosystem within that community where other people have opportunities to create something and have a voice. That's where really, really rich communities are made. She also in the book talks about turning anger into action, creating a shared vision, and then sustaining momentum. So I have a little activity that I think we can go through. And if you have some pen and paper and want to write this down, I'll give you a moment to grab that. If not, get your thinking caps and let's get started. We are going to come up with our community blueprint. So first, we're going to reflect on our role. Then we're going to identify some opportunities and create a shared vision. But I'm going to walk you guys through each of those steps. So while you're reflecting on your role, I'm going to ask you a few questions, and I'll give you a moment to think or a moment to write. Pause if you need to pause. But this is going to help you to reflect on what your role is in your community and how you can use it. So first, who are the people you feel most connected to in your community? What is one issue or one cause that you care deeply about? What skills or strengths do you bring that could help that cause that you care about deeply? And how can you amplify the voices of others rather than taking the lead? Okay, so now we are going to identify opportunities for action. So different ways that we can employ our community and employ our role in our community. So there are a couple examples from the book, and I'm going to ask you 2 questions. So you could organize a neighborhood meeting. You could partner with a local group in your community that's already doing the cause that you care for. Or you can create a social media page that's dedicated to something you care about in your community. But here are my 2 questions. What's one small action you can take this week to begin building or contributing to your community? And who can you reach out to for guidance, collaboration, or mentorship? And then the last step is my favorite. Step 3, we are going to create a shared vision. So I will give you an opportunity to think about yours, and then I'll tell you the one that I created earlier. So first, we're going to write a sentence about the community you want to create. So start your sentence with, my community will be. Then I need you to list 2 to 3 actions that you can do this month to see that your community becomes a little bit closer to your vision. Okay, so for mine, I was thinking about what I wanted my community to be like, and I want my community to be filled with people who are knowledgeable and engaged. So I wrote, my community will be more knowledgeable and engaged about media, its impact, and how they can get involved if they so choose. 2 to 3 actions that I decided to choose. Number 1, I'm going to learn a little bit more about nonprofits and how I can get involved with one or how I can make one. And then my number 2 is I want to learn a little bit more about my city council and the local people that are in charge so that I can be a little bit more involved. So once you've crafted your community blueprint, I encourage you to revisit it, refine it, tweak it a little bit if it needs tweaking, and add on to it, because if you're doing it, you're going to build it out. If you're working with your community, you're understanding their issues, you're understanding what's already going on politically around you, it's going to change and it's going to evolve. As your community blueprint is carried out, it will evolve over time because you'll have success with different things, you'll find new needs. So I encourage you all to start on your community blueprint. I hold all of this really, really close because that is a big reason for the podcast in the first place. When I started this podcast, I did have a part of me that wanted to learn about sound editing and different interfaces and just the technology side of it. But then the other half of it was that I really seriously did want to make an impact. I did want to do something that would inspire people or empower people. And while I love to lead, I think it's really important to create space where other people's voices can be heard, which is why it's so important that every other episode I have some people on that get to tell their story and get to tell their success. You'll also notice that I know most of these people personally. So these are people that I actually am in community with. So I encourage all of you to use your platform or the people that you know, your community, to inspire others. At the end of the day, we all have to live here together, and you want to feel like it's a place that you like belonging to, but it's beyond belonging. It's about actually creating a legacy. So employing these strategies can help you to create a legacy, and at the very least, it can help you to build a community that you actually like being a part of. So as we've moved through these different episodes, I hope to show you guys different ways to not only build yourself up, but to build the community around you, to build your network. And so now we're finding different ways to employ those strategies and to start getting some things done. So let me know in the comments, what is it that you would do with your platform or with your voice if you had a chance? What kind of change would you like to see? Maybe it's something that we can work on together, or if you want to tap me for your strategies or for anything, let me know. But I am so grateful to have you all back for the Better and Badder podcast for another episode. We are rounding out the end of a first beautiful season, and I'm so grateful for everybody that has listened, everybody that's been on the podcast, and everybody that'll be tuning in for some good things that are going to be coming really, really soon. Make sure you like, subscribe, and of course, follow me on social media. My handles will be on screen if you're watching, and if you aren't, I'm Inslee, but on social media, I am Inslay. That's INZLAY, and I hope to see you guys back for another episode of Better and Badder.